Welcome everybody to our Getting Started with R365 webinar covering practical tips for inventory, food costing, and operations. Few housekeeping items before we jump into things. During the webinar, please feel free to add any questions by clicking on the question mark in the toolbar on the side of your screen. We do have time at the end of the webinar to answer questions, so we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. So keep any questions flowing. You must answer at least 3 questions and remain on for the entirety of the webinar in order to receive your CPE credit. So if you're here today for a little CPE credit, please make sure that you're participating in those poll questions, at a minimum 3 of them, and are here for the entirety of the webinar. If there's anybody else at your organization, your business that would like to see this webinar today and were not able to attend, we will be sending you a recording following the presentation. So be on the lookout for that. You can pass that along to any colleagues who weren't able to attend today. And throughout the webinar, if you do run into any issues, need any help, feel free to contact our marketing team. They are on standby here at marketing@restaurant365.com. Awesome. So we're getting past all the nitty gritty. Let's get into the fun stuff. What are we covering today? So from inventory to COGS, that's going to be our first topic, really best practices for tracking inventory, calculating cost of goods sold. We're going to talk about food cost reporting. How are we leveraging reports inside of R365 to monitor profitability, especially in today's ever-changing economy, and labor and scheduling optimization as well, planning strategies to reduce your labor costs, another very important variable in your restaurant today. And then pro tips for just getting started. What can you do today to take immediate impact into your business? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we will have time for Q&A. And so we want to leave a little bit time for our experts to talk a little bit about that. So I have 2 of my favorite people alongside me today to chat about all of these topics that we went through. Real quickly, before I toss over the mic their way, just a quick introduction for myself. My name is Bree Holm. I'm a senior manager here at Restaurant 365 over our field sales division. So excited to be here. I'm ultimately your Vanna White today. So Carlos and Anthony will be spending most of the time to go through everything. I'll be here to facilitate poll questions, Q&A at the end, and so forth. So Carlos being our guest today, I will toss it over to you to do a quick introduction first and foremost, and then we'll give Anthony some time as well.
Hey, Bree. Thanks for the intro. Best Vanna White we're going to have ever.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, my name is Carlos Camelo. I have a background in restaurants. We have opened 70, remodeled another 40 before we started Lion Chasers 5 years ago now. And so we do probably 250 implementations a year roughly. We are accounting and bookkeeping firm as well. We only work with folks in the 365 ecosystem, whether it's consultant, project work, cleanup, you name it. If you're in 365 and you need it, we either use it or teach people how to use it. So that's a little bit about me. And I have 6 kids. And so, which is always like a big one. Someone always is like rolling their eyes. The oldest is 24 and the youngest are 13. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Busy guy.
Awesome.
Love it. Anthony.
Yeah, my name is Anthony Lucero. I'm on our solution engineer team. So my role here is really helping the sales organization be able to give technical demos, be able to show the software, be able to help show how you'd be able to use it more practically. My background's heavy in accounting. Have both my degrees in accounting, 20 years experience kind of in the field, 16 out with restaurants, was a former controller and eventually CFO of a group, helped them grow from 4 units to 18 units here in Central Texas. I was actually a former user of the Restaurant 365 platform, so rolled it out for several years on the accounting and operations side. So been on both sides of the platform, been on other software, used ours practically, and moved over here about 2 years ago into this new role to kind of help others be able to utilize it. So excited to be here and kind of show how we can help you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. We're going to toss it over to Carlos to share just a little bit more. I know you gave a brief high level, Carlos, but want to give you an opportunity to talk more high level, or excuse me, a little more granular about Lion Chaser in general and kind of what you're able to do.
Yeah, I shared my background being predominantly operations. And then 5 years ago, I wanted to work for 365 because I used it to open the last restaurant that I opened, and I thought it was awesome. And I was like, all right, I gotta figure out how it works because it just made life easier as an operator. And so I went to work for Restaurant 365 for a year, and then in March of 2020, my partner, so we have three founding partners, myself and two other ladies, Angela and Jess, and they both own accounting firms for 10 plus years, restaurant accounting firms. One worked for Deloitte, one of the big fours. But I was implementing the operations side of 365 while working there. And then Angela Morris was implementing the accounting side. And so during the COVID, when that whole thing happened, Angela and I got together and said, hey, we wanna offer a solution to the folks that have 365 post implementation. So, 365 does a great job of onboarding, but then what happens when you're done, right? There's like, how do I fine tune it? And it's a really awesome program, has a lot of depth to it. And so that was the premise of how we started. So now like I said, we actually, it was a cool stat. We did 35% of all 365 onboardings currently, which is a pretty cool stat. Yeah. And so then we also have about 500 plus locations that we support on a bookkeeping level, another 150 that we support on an operational side. We do project work, consulting. Our biggest client has 1,000 locations, and then we work with the single unit operators as well. So everything from 1 unit all the way to 1,000. And so that's how we operate. Everyone that we hire comes from the restaurant world. So we're not just like, I always joke, we're not just a pretty face behind the keyboard, right? We understand the language of the four walls and what it is that you go through on a daily basis. And so, we use it, we teach it, and then we keep it moving.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've had the honor of working with Carlos and his team for quite some time, probably since inception of your partnership with R365, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So I know their business very intimately, know exactly what they're able to offer. We do have another slide here just to kind of highlight kind of what Carlos was speaking of. So I'll allow you to kind of speak a little bit more on some details there, Carlos, as well.
Yeah, I mean, as you see there in front of you, one of the cool things is we are fully Spanish speaking. We also offer on-site work. And so we really just I really take a hands-on approach to it, to what it does. Sometimes I make it seem so easy, and it's like not a big deal because in our world, the software is very simple. And so one of the other things that we pride ourselves on is everyone that's on here is in the restaurant industry, and the only thing in common is the word restaurant, right? Because everyone runs their restaurants so differently, and so we want to make sure that we give ourselves enough agility to move and adapt to each client. And so I think that's what's allowed us to, do some of the things that you see here in front of you.
Awesome. So if you're somebody who's listening today that needs assistance in any of these areas, maybe you're a current user of the software and you're just finding yourself in some inefficiencies, or maybe just struggling a little bit, or maybe you're exploring R365 and haven't decided to take that plunge yet, but you're hoping to in the future, Carlos and his team are a great resource to know how they can help you from, the very beginning stages of evaluating R365 all the way to ongoing services. So excited to have Carlos a part of the webinar today. I want to switch gears a little bit for any of you guys who are new to Restaurant 365, maybe haven't seen Restaurant 365 before. This is your first time being exposed to us. Hopefully not the case, but if it is, welcome. And we're excited to share a little bit about what Restaurant 365 does. I'm actually going to toss it over to Anthony, where he's going to give us kind of a high level understanding on who Restaurant 365 is, what do we do, how do we help the space, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Yes, you want to jump to that next slide? Yeah, so one of the beauties of our software and one of our big strengths is our integrations and integrating to things that are restaurant specific. So as you can see from the name, Restaurant 365, we only focus on restaurants. That is the only industry we go talk to. It's the only industry we work in. And so because of that, it allows the depth of the integrations that we have be very specific to this industry. You look at some of these others like a NetSuite, a QuickBooks, they're good pieces of software. They're really great at what they do, but they're trying to cater to a bunch of industries. And so it's really hard for them to be doing things that are specific and unique for us in our industry. That's where we can really help. So we start with that point of sale. We have over 140 different point of sales we integrate with, everything from the big guys, Toast and Q and Parbrink, to most major brands, to some smaller ones that are up and coming. But what that means is we're connecting into that point of sale and we're bringing in data in every single day into the point of sale. On the accounting side of the platform, we're using that to help build your sales journal entries automatically for you. So nobody's having to go through and hand key or pull reports, put it in Excel, import it in, go through that manual process. We're doing all of that. But also on the operational side of our platform, which we'll talk about here in a sec, We're also using that to help fuel reporting, like product mix reporting, using it for theoretical depletion of inventory, using its recipes so you can see your menu mix and see how your menu is performing. So trying to use our integrations to leverage multiple sides. Moving over to the vendors, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I
No,
skipped
you're
ahead
good.
for
No, you're good. I said moving on, so I get. Sorry, yeah.
you.
So when we're looking at our vendors, we're integrated with over 200 different vendors. We have what's called an EDI integration. So again, on the accounting side, we're pulling those invoices in automatically for you. We're coding them out. So whether it's just going food and paper, or we're getting deeper into getting to dairy, chemicals, produce, things like that, and trying to break out those invoices further. But they're coming in automatically, being coded out. What we're also being able to do with that is show you pricing changes, showing you how your different items that you're paying are changing price on you. We'll talk about that a little more here in the kind of presentation. But one of those lost things, in my opinion, where it's easy to kind of overlook that, but can impact your cost of goods huge. Also using that integration to help with updating inventory valuation automatically, using it to update your recipe costing automatically. A big pain point for a lot of people to kind of keep up with those spreadsheets to do that. We're automating that for you, and also have an AP automation tool where we can leverage an OCR AI technology that'll actually scan an invoice, read that, and really great for those vendors that we're not integrated with, but we still got to get into the system, get AP, get those invoices in and get them paid. Having a technology there baked directly in the software, not having to leverage a third party for that, being able to do it in. And then lastly, we also have a bank automation tool. We connect in with thousands of different banks, pulling that information in and helping automate a lot of the bank reconciliation process. So, like I said, automation is really big to really try and help with a lot of that manual process and all those manual data entry, and automate a lot of that to help your team be more efficient and help them be doing things more value add to the organization, as opposed to just keying in 1,000 invoices a month. They can be doing a lot more other things. So, a little bit about who we are and what we do. So, we are what we call a restaurant ERP system. So, we have a lot of different modules, but the big key point, and probably the biggest thing that you'll want to take away from it, is everything is all connected in one central set of data. So, the traditional model that a lot of restaurants find is, I have my accounting software, let's just say QuickBooks, and then I have my Margin Edge, I have my Crunch Time, I have a separate operational software. You have information trying to go into both. You create data silos, you create data flow issues, trying to get information from one into the other. Where we solve for that is we have one centralized data hub that everything comes into, that fuels every part of the platform, whether that's our accounting module, whether that's our inventory module, whether that's our workforce, which is our scheduler, it's our learning management system, whether it's our payroll system. You can use all of them. And as you can imagine, the more you bolt on, the more benefit you're going to get from it. But if where we see a lot of people start is just the accounting and inventory, that's where a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is in those two modules. But like I said, that's the biggest benefit we have, is where we're able to have that one centralized. So as soon as I in accounting put an invoice in, operations instantly sees it. It's instantly in inventory. As soon as operations put something in, accounting it has visibility into it and can see what's going on. I don't have to have an IT team that build these integrations. I don't have to worry about how does data flow back and forth. As soon as it's in, we're all seeing it. We're all a part of it. We're all using the same data for all of our reporting.
Awesome. So as we segue into more specifics on this, I want to stop us a little bit here, and we're going to segue into our first poll question. So you should see that poll pop up on your screen here. What is your biggest challenge with inventory management? I'm going to give everybody a chance to answer this once we get full participation here. Just a reminder, you do need to participate in at least 3 of these. There are 5 in today's presentation. You need to participate in at least 3 and be here for the full webinar to get your CPE credit. So this should be an easy one. All the above. A lot of people, all the above. Tracking it accurately. Absolutely. I'm waiting on a few people, so I'll give everybody a chance. We're almost at 100% participation. All right. It looks like a little bit of everything, right? Tracking inventory accurately, managing inventory across multiple locations, reducing waste and spoilage, integrating inventory data with accounting, and all the above, which a lot of us are seeing right now. So just some results for you guys to kind of see what we're working with here with our group.
Not
All
so,
right.
yeah, not surprising, frankly. That's about where I expected it to be. A little bit of
Yeah.
everything, but yeah.
A little bit of everything, that's for sure. So that perfectly segues us to talk about inventory to COGS. So, and I think Carlos, were you chatting about this, or was this Anthony?
We'll dive in, Anthony. You wanna kind of tee it up, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, like we know, inventory is the kind of one of the major pieces of the cost of goods calculation. It's beginning inventory plus purchases minus ending inventory is what gets us cost of goods. So starting with a solid inventory, getting that consistently done correctly and having a good process and good program for it is key. So what we see a lot of challenges and talking with a lot of groups is first inconsistent inventory counts, either doing them inconsistently or not having a good structure to perform those. So what we see and where we kind of start first is you got to really set a solid cadence, whether that's once a quarter, once a period, ideally once a week, but set a standard cadence. And then have some program in place that consistently uses the same items every single time you count. If you're not doing those two key pieces, as simple as it sounds, there's a lot of groups that are not. It makes it really hard to have a good accurate cost of goods number that you can trust and you can really use to see how you're performing.
Yeah. Don't forget the spreadsheets. That was always my favorite, right? Someone, don't you dare mess up the formula on a spreadsheet, some Excel thing, and then all of a sudden you're done. I think sometimes when people think about COGS, they it's like, hey, what's my inventory count? How much did I use? And Anthony, I just always remember the operator in me going, the period closed last week. It's gonna be 2 weeks before I get inventory values. So now I'm 2 weeks in before I get them. On the third week of the following period, I finally will be able to figure it out, review it, and then maybe I can tackle it. And so by the time I tackle my previous period, my current period's over. And so, you know, when you think about that, that's where to me the reason, not a sales pitch, someone asked me to say this, but that's where the power of 365 really comes to life. And so you look at it from these pro tips, and you can read it, and they are very accurate. But one of the benefits, and in my opinion, what makes 365 so easy is if you approve an invoice, then all of a sudden the prices just flood through the system. And so, like, literally, if I'm a manager, I got to enter an invoice anywhere, somewhere at least. And Anthony, I mean, I know you talked about it in previously when you said like when the operator enters the invoice, it automatically goes into the accounting side, which is awesome. But as an operator, when I enter the invoice, I don't have to wait and wonder. I can begin to run reports live. And so it's like driving the car, looking in the, not looking in the rearview mirror. I'm looking forward when I'm running my business. And that's like a game changer in our industry, in my opinion. So, anyways.
No, couldn't agree more. And that was one of the biggest things for me is, being on the accounting side, people are always, I need more, I need faster, I need more, I need faster. And I get it,
Yeah.
especially when we're, and that's one of the biggest things too that I see in talking with a lot of groups and kind of thinking through my past too is, we have we call it the wall between accounting and ops. And in
Mhm.
my personal opinion, the wall exists a lot because we're living in two systems. And by living in two systems, it artificially creates this wall of I'm doing my thing, you're doing your thing, even though we're all trying to, work in the same direction, but being able to all live out of the same software. Because I don't know how many times I would, my operators would be in their software, they'd be using it thinking, all right, I hit my bonus, I hit my 30% target, cost of goods are great. And then because I'm using a different system, I'm tracking actually the vendor statements. There's invoices that sometimes got missed. I give them a 32% cost of goods of that final P&L 3 weeks later, like you described. And now I created this animosity from an operator because they thought they hit it when it's not my fault. They think it's my fault, and rightfully so. I'm the one who had to report this number. And it's not really anybody's fault, but it's because we're using disparate systems and because there's delays in reporting and they can't trust their own system because, again, there's different things. So that having this system in place and having everybody looking at the same data where that'll never happen again was one of the biggest leaps forward for our company personally. Was again knocking down that wall and letting that trust start to rebuild, where operations could trust the numbers they were getting, know where it was coming from, and understand how accounting was generating their P&L. Instead of them having their system, I have my system, and you just
That was
don't know
big
where it's
time.
coming from.
I remember going, what does this accountant know? They're never in my restaurant. What are they talking about? And they're like, hey man, can you send this invoice? And you're like, I already sent it. It's in the package. And they're like, well, where's the package? Oh, it's in the mail. Because you have to, you remember having to put the package together and send it, right? And you're like, come on, dude. Like, are you kidding me? Like, we're like a week behind now. And so um you're bringing up PTSD in me of the battle that you're describing. I
Oh
just,
yeah.
it's kind of funny, but when
Yeah.
you're looking at that, Anthony, one of the things too, because you're right, you're working in two separate systems, and so um, I think this like secondary benefit is it creates a little bit of more harmony between the company because now we're accounting and ops are hand in glove working together, and the data is real. And so one of the ways that we have seen that clients get the best use of it is there in that pro tip number 2 where you get the automation with the invoices because if I'm a manager, I can just take a picture, which most people they can send a TikTok video in the bathroom faster than they can you can take a picture faster than you can send a TikTok video, really. And so you really just take a picture, you select the location, which is it's all user settings there. But once I take a picture and I upload it, you train the OCR technology to read it. Now all of a sudden accounting's not waiting on me. And so then you avoid the who's waiting on who game. And then when you have the EDI vendors connected, I mean, it really, I don't know, Anthony, if you want to talk about that and how that's really been a game changer. At least I've seen it with my clients in the 365 space.
Oh yeah, I mean the EDI integration. So I talked about it briefly, but we have over 200 vendors. Everything from the major broadliners, your Cisco, U.S. Foods, PFG. The big guys. There's 49 produce vendors in there. There's a bunch of smaller bread vendors. We try to get as many as we can, and it's constantly growing list. But it completely eliminates the manual work. And that invoice is literally brought directly in. Every single line item that's on that invoice is included in there. Every line item is mapped to a GL account. So accounting is not having to manually type in or manually calculate. $1,400 is food, $200 is paper, $500 is chemical. Having to go through and calculate all that by pulling all those line items. So that part's being done. But like we talked earlier, it's updating my inventory valuation automatically. So what we're always doing in that spreadsheet, we're having to go back and go through a bunch of invoices and see what the current cost is, which as much as nobody wants to admit it, we don't do it because it's a lot of work. There's a lot going on there. So it just creates so much automation that eliminates a lot of these manual tasks we're all doing that nobody wants to do. But also it gets it in there quicker. Because to your point, Carlos, I can get the invoice for me at the store. Well, at some point I got to get that over to accounting, and then accounting has to find the time to then put it in. At best, it's a couple of days. At more often, it's 7 to 10 days later. Now it's happening instantaneously. The same day that truck is showing up, a lot of times, that invoice is in the system, coded out, and available for reporting. So now we're
Yeah.
getting more up-to-date food cost reporting. I can get to a weekly P&L now more easily and at a more timely because I can actually on Monday see prior week information instead of I get a weekly P&L, but it's on Friday for the prior week. And again, it's helpful, but the further away I am from when that happened, the further away I am from being able to do anything about it.
I've had 3 clopins since then, man.
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not trying to do all that. It's funny because when you transition from that, I'll put back my operator hat on. The other thing that I think when people think about food costs, literally it means a lot to a lot of different people. One of the things that I've noticed, folks really look at it from like, what does it cost me to sell this food? Like that burger that's in front of me. How am I going to know the price of the tomato, the onion, and the bun and come together to make sure that I'm selling it competitively? And so the last pro tip you see there, which is adjusting recipe costing, which is what's powerful is when I approve that invoice, my recipes update automatically. And so if my team takes inventory, to me, it's like, what is the juice worth the squeeze, right? And so if I'm taking inventory and now I have my recipes in there, then I can go to a manager and even if it's just my top 10 items, I can say, hey, what's going on with the cost? And if I can improve my top 10 items by 20% efficiency across the board, or my top 10 menu items, what I sell the most of, I can make sure they're within my range of food costs. All of a sudden, I have impact in my restaurant without really changing what the operator does. All right, because the operator is working, changing prices, adjusting a recipe to make it fit the framework of the box of like my profitability. The operator doesn't have to work more or less. They don't have to do anything different in that regard, and I can still then drive profit to the bottom line. I just become so powerful with everything that Anthony said and how the invoices come through, et cetera. So, yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
I appreciate the conversation around this. One thing I would ask, I guess, Carlos, before we segue, probably directed towards you, as you're like implementing customers on R365, if someone's struggling in this area, like where is somebody getting their quickest win? Like what's something that's like the most impactful? These are all great pro tips, but like what's something that they need to start doing right away that you're seeing an immediate win or as close to immediate as we can get win?
Yeah, I think just the way the vendor integration of invoices comes in is powerful, right? So like one of the beautiful things about the system is if I have a really tight invoice process, that knocks out like 90% of everything I want to get. And so what happens then is allows me to have visibility into what are my vendors charging me. I now have instant visibility on, hey, there's credits that are owed, are not owed. Why are you paying that invoice? And I'm no longer waiting. And so I can literally now look at an invoice and I can run a report that says, oh, whoa, my prices are going up right now. What's going on? And it doesn't really require a lot for that to get it. And you could, I mean, if someone started implementing on day one, they can have that kind of data within 3 weeks. There's nuance there, right? So someone don't quote that and say within 3 weeks it'll happen. There's nuance to that. However, with the right workflow, within 3 weeks, you can have a really tight invoice process that gives you visibility into what am I paying, what are vendors charging me, and because if I have the invoices in, I have now my cost of my items on a really like minor level, then I can instantly begin to put recipes together. So like that's like the most understated win, if you will. A lot of folks come in and they hear this topic, and it's such a great question that you asked, Bree, because a lot of folks come in and they go, man, I want to look at my recipes. In 365, if we get the foundation right, which is how do I invoice, then the recipes almost are automatic at that point. Because when I approve this, when I approve this invoice, my recipes will get updated automatically. And that's like, you talk about a home run, if you will, the
Yeah.
biggest ripple effect from the biggest, like if you throw a rock into a lake, which one's going to have the biggest ripple effect? Invoices in 365 is that ripple effect.
Love that. Awesome. I feel like we could talk about this topic forever, but we're segueing into something that's in the same realm. So before we get there, I want to ask another question of everybody. So let me segue to our next poll question here about food cost reporting. So how often do you currently analyze food cost reports? And I'll give everybody like a minute or so. Actually, you all are really fast responders, which is great. That means we're having an engaging conversation. I love it. I have a few stragglers out there. All right. Last call for anybody who hasn't answered it, wants their CPE credit. Awesome. All right. So kind of a mixed bag. Looks like half of us are doing this weekly. The rest of us are monthly, quarterly, maybe never. So let's jump into that a little bit. So food cost reporting, if you couldn't tell, that's where we were segueing. Carlos, I'm going to ask you a question first.
Sure.
Feel like food costs can obviously really sneak up on operators. And when you're working with your clients, like how are you advising somebody to track this? And what are their first steps when they're coming into R365?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think we covered a little bit. We covered a good chunk of it in the previous topic, right? So, I mean, I think of food costing is, um, we got to get our invoices right. And then if we enter recipes, we're looking at it in a different ballgame. So I think sometimes, the question that we ask is like, why are we taking inventory? What is the main purpose of it, right? And when I ask folks that, believe it or not, they're like, because I need to know my food costs. And I'm like, okay, I get it, but like, for what reason? Are you looking at menu engineering? Are you trying to understand what your team is using? Are you trying to figure out what you should be using, right? And at first, I remember when I first entered the space of like onboarding clients, I was always surprised at how many like, blank stares and confused people I got, because they were like, really weren't sure. They're like, I don't know, it's just what we always do. That was always the questions. That's kind of like the answer you got. But so my thought was really simple. It goes, okay, well, what is it that you're trying to drive? Right? Like, do you know if you sell a burger for $10, do you run 20% food cost, 30% food costs on it? Right? Because that's a different conversation than if all of a sudden I look at my P&L and I have 45% usage. Right. So, like, believe it or not, it's just kind of like narrowing it down to knowing what am I trying to get, because then I could steer the client there. And then once the client knows that, I really can't stress it enough. It's really about invoicing and then setting, and then once you invoice right, the next step then is, hey, let's build inventory sheets on a shelf to sheet basis. Because what I find most of the time is, if you ask folks like, hey, when do you count inventory? They're like at the end of the month or at the end, whatever, at the end of the night. What does the operator do? They're either going to work late or they're going to want to not be there late. And so they come in the morning and they try to count before they open. And so what I advise them to do is say, hey, let's set up your inventory on a shelf to sheet basis, because you can instantly cut down on time by as much as 70%. So like I have a client in Houston that like just didn't believe me that they could do that. All right, because they have 6,000 bottles of wine. I didn't even know there was that many bottles of wine available in the world, but I was like blown away, because out of those 6,000 bottles of wine, 4,500 were red wine. And then they had 1,000 white wines and 500 champagnes, which I didn't realize there's that many champagnes. So whatever, right? So they already looked at me like I had three heads, because they're like, what do you mean you don't know this? And I was like, all right, so listen, let's just take the time to build a shelf to sheet. And so they did. What the shelf to sheet allows you to do in 365 is everyone, because your user access can really impact a lot. And so it'd be like having Bree, me, and Anthony could go into each section of the wine and begin to count. At the same time, they had someone count the bar, and what they did is they developed their team to take inventory. So this 6-hour inventory process went down to 45 minutes on the bar, which was
Wow.
mind blowing, right? So what happened? The managers are like, this is awesome. I now have time to look at my numbers. And that by default, their food costs improved by 5% because people counted better. And then the manager took an hour to review data, that because they weren't really reviewing before. Because if it took you 6 hours to do inventory, like deuces, I'm out, man. Like you got me to count for 6 hours. You know what I'm saying? It's like one of those
Yeah.
ordeals. And so that's where I would begin. I know, Anthony, when you and I talked in prep, you had some other ideas that were really good in here. So I'm gonna pass it back to you in case you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, for me, being on the accounting side and, trying to put all these numbers together and put together food cost reporting and then try and help decipher what actually happened for the month and kind of do that post-mortem. We would look and be like, hey, we're up 3% from last month. And then we're going to be in that P&L review meeting with all the managers. Be like, hey, GM, your food cost is up 3%. What happened? And inevitably, it was always this blank stare, and it was a couple of anecdotes of, well, we dropped a couple of briskets, or I mean, I think brisket price went up like a little bit, right? So that surely that was part of it. And there wasn't a good tool, and there just isn't. There wasn't really good tools that we had available to really help us truly understand what was going on. And there was anecdotal stuff, but there just wasn't enough to really know what was the problem across our vast menu and all the items that we had. What was that store's issue? And so for me, like that second pro tip you see there, comparing theoretical versus actual, for me personally, that was the number one driver for us. We dropped our cost of goods by a full 3% in the first year just from living and dying by that report. What that report does is all the integrations we have where we're connecting all your items to recipes, those recipes are tied to menu items. We're seeing all the purchases, we're seeing what's being sold. So we're able to track for you how much you should be using of every single item you're buying. Well, then you actually do an inventory count. So now we know how much you actually went through. And I can show you which items you're having a problem with. Whether you want to look at a high level category and look at it, what are my meats that are having a problem? Or do I want to get down to each individual meat and see which ones are? And that's where we're able to look and right, I got brisket at this store is the problem. I got turkey at this store. I've got macaroni and potato salad at this store. And so now my operations team and my training staff knew what to zero in with them, where to watch, what to look for, what to retrain on, and help get them and see and be able to track those improvements and see, hey, we're 80% efficient. Now we're 85. Now we're 88. We're improving how we're doing, and being able to see measurable results was gigantic. Because, I mean, I think generally speaking, all operators want to do a good job. They want to serve a good product. They want to do it the right way. They want to portion properly. But if they don't know there's a problem, they don't know where to fix it. And I know from their side, it can always be very frustrating just to be told your food cost is high. What's going on? And there's a lot going on in a restaurant. In my opinion, the most difficult job in the world is a restaurant manager. They have more, or at least in the restaurant, kind of company. They're the most difficult job that exists. They have so much they're responsible for, from keeping guests happy to keeping employees engaged to keeping food prepped and moving forward to all the different things that are going on at any given time. It's an extremely difficult job. And so anything we could do to make their job easier and make them understand what's going on easier and give them tools to help them see where those problems are, that was game changing for us. Just that simple report and being able to pull that information out and do it on a weekly basis so we could track how they're doing and be able to do it instantaneously. Because as soon as the inventory count was done and approved, and we were able to shrink that time down to, we were doing the same thing. We were done in about 45 minutes an hour. I could do a post mortem right then because I had all my invoices in because they were all feeding through EDI. Once I was done with that inventory count, I could see an actual versus theoretical and be able to either Sunday night or Monday morning be able to see where we're at. Really, I guess we had to do it Monday morning because we want to get sales in from Sunday. But yeah, so Monday morning we're being able to look through that instantaneously and know where we were, not a couple of days later and kind of I'm kind of already moved on and thinking about something else. Where were we? How are we doing? How did we do? Now, how can we start improving for this week?
Mhm.
That
Yeah, I agree with you, man. That report is the biggest game changer because I could literally take inventory on my phone, sit down on my computer, and then instantly review it. And so when you think about like in the restaurant world, we always think of labor costs, and labor costs is strictly a byproduct of how much we pay people and all that. But sometimes what we forget is there's a time cost, right? So how much time am I putting on people to do things to get information? And if all of a sudden I can save my managers 20% and redirect the same hours towards something that can then create a bigger result, that's just so valuable. And so Anthony, I was like, that was the report for me that I was like, I nerded out on 365. I was like, all right, this is like mind blowing. I am down to like how many ounces of salt were overused, and you can like nerd out like that. And it doesn't, and I don't have to know math. I just have to count. You know what I mean? Like that's like mind blowing from a recipe engineering. And so, from food costs sneaking up, the other thing that we always wait till the end, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you can get ahead of it, and so then the cool thing is the purchasing reports in 365 really can help you see the prices jump up. So if you're having like a midweek, and this is one of the, if I can just go in like on a Wednesday, Thursday, look at my cost, meaning like what am I buying for the food, then I can instantly go to my vendors and go, hey, look, what are we doing? And the weekend's coming when I'm gonna have the bulk, and I can either buy a different product, make substitutes or what have you, or I can go to my managers and say, hey, look, what are we doing with spending? And because 365 has this COGS, cost of goods alignment report, that kind of helps almost like a declining budget. And so then I can also make sure that I'm not overspending either, and I have the freshest food available so that I'm not wasting food because I didn't realize how much I was spending, right? From a declining budget that I don't then have to go to a spreadsheet to put in, I can just run a report. I can even get it emailed to me every morning. So like Wednesday, when I go to put an order, I can already see what my budget is and how much I've spent, and I don't have to go look for it. And so, Bree, those are some other tips in regards to how to avoid the sneak up, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. That's awesome. Well, you kind of perfectly teed up our next discussion too, because we're going to segue a little bit out of cost of goods and food costs and actually talk about labor, which you briefly brought up, Carlos. So I'm going to launch another poll here to get us teed up because I want to know where we're all feeling about labor and scheduling right now. So how do you currently handle labor scheduling? Should be an easy question. Are we doing it manually, on spreadsheets, on paper? Are we using scheduling software that maybe is not integrated with our accounting? Are we using R365? Bonus points? Or are we not currently tracking labor scheduling at all right now? So I'll give everybody a little bit of time to answer that. I have a few stragglers. You have like 5 seconds. This is your last warning. Get your third question in, your CPE credit at a minimum. Awesome. All right. So it looks like most of us are using scheduling software. Some of us are still doing things manually. A few bonus points are using R365 already. That's awesome. And maybe we're just not tracking it at all. So mixed bag on kind of what we're working with right now, which, as we've said with all of these, not super surprising. So as it comes to like labor and scheduling optimization, Carlos, Anthony, I mean, what are some pro tips with R365 and labor scheduling in general?
And then you wanna start off so you can talk about how, integrates and all that, and then I'll answer from an operator.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the benefits of it, and look, I'll be honest, our scheduler, there's nothing world beat changing about it. It's most schedulers have a lot of the same functionality. So it's a solid piece of software that does exactly what it's supposed to do. But really where its huge benefits come in is the integration we have with that point of sale, integrating a lot of the other functionality we have, like our forecasting tool that helps forecast your sales using all the other data we have in the system to really help give you a solid forecast. Because obviously, part of your target when you're building your labor is I want to know what my labor cost is going to look like based on the schedule. If I don't have sales, then all I'm doing is just forecasting dollars. And $400 on 1,000 is a lot different than $400 on $3,000 in sales. So having that sales piece is huge, as well as just having it integrated with the other things like events and being able to forecast different things we have going on in the system that we're helping track elsewhere, and knowing I've got this big thing coming up, I need to make sure I schedule for it. So part of the labor integration we have is we're pulling in all the time punches, we're pulling in all those wages from that point of sale. So we're helping automate pulling all that information in, so you're not having to manually load that in, manually load changes. We're tracking all those changes on a daily basis. So we're able to help pull all that in and help as you're building the schedule, show you what it is in dollars, showing you what it is a percentage of sales. So you can see, is this schedule compliant with our labor targets or is it not from the ground up?
Yeah, as an operator, forecasting was always like the big thing, right? Because labor is a percentage of sales, and so if I guess wrong, I can literally destroy my week. And 365's forecasting tool is really awesome because it's tied to a sales ticket, so it knows per hour what have you done historically, and it makes it very simple to calculate. The other thing it does is you can add like tags and hey, this was a snow day because I mean, I don't know how many people remember what happened like 20 minutes ago or last week, let alone I'm not going to remember it a year from now, like, and if I have change or if I move managers around or if I go to teach someone how to make the schedule, I have all that data in there so that when folks go to forecasts, they can make sure it's really tight. And then when you go into year over year forecasting, the system has it's a formula that's kind of complicated, but it does it and it works. It's like really accurate. It looks at like the trend last week, your last 8 weeks compared to last year, the same time frame, so it knows what to forecast up or down. And I mean, I'm always amazed at how accurate it is. So then when you make the schedule, if you're within the number that you need. And then you can also, if you use departments, you can actually give your front of house and your back of house different labor targets. And then if my back of house manager wants to make the schedule, I can give them their target, and my front of house manager has their target. And so just like those little things that are not like earth shattering, but like to have it all in one. And then because it is all tied together, I can get a daily report emailed to me that says this is what I used versus what my schedule was. And right away I can see it at any given point, which is awesome. In addition to the overtime warnings and some of those labor rules that go with it. So from an operator, it's really easy. It's so easy to use that most people it's only about an hour of training on it between like some setup and some of the bells and whistles, and then just how to make it and where the print button is, and that's really it. It's just very intuitive to use from that point forward. So
Absolutely. And then again, like we've talked about, one of the benefits of everything being together is this labor data that we're getting that we're using for showing are we hitting our schedule target or not is the same labor information that's flowing into the P&L. So it's again, we're not getting surprises when my software over here told me I'm at 14% and then accounting spits out 18% and I don't know where that came from. I'm able to see that and be able to track where I'm going and know with confidence that I'm hitting my labor target and that's going to reflect on the financial statements and not just, hey, I think I'm okay, but we're using two different systems to kind of create this.
yeah. And sometimes you use two separate thought processes, and 365 allows you to have what's called burden labor, which it allows you to put in there like all your payroll taxes, your salaried manager, in addition to your hourly employees. So if you wanted to, you could actually see your true labor and kind of get like an estimate. So when you run your labor and you bring in that data on the P&L, it doesn't catch you off guard when whatever the taxes were. So that feature can really help you from a cash flow on the labor side as well, which is I had that part. I haven't seen a lot of stuff, other softwares do that.
No,
Yeah.
that's actually what I was going to bring up because that's one of the huge ones. Is some people like we didn't look at burden labor. We just kind of knew that was there. We just literally just looked at the hourly, just that variable labor piece, and tried to really focus on that. There's a lot of people that look at. I want to know what this total labor cost is going to be. I want to know salaries. I want to know payroll taxes. I want to know benefits. I want to kind of get an estimate for all of that in my labor and see what total labor is going to cost me. And we give you that flexibility to view it the way you want.
Love it. Well, in the essence of time, I know we're getting close, and I know that all of us are running businesses and are busy, so we probably only have a few minutes left to stay on here. But I do want to kind of zoom out a little bit and take a look just in general. I know we talked about a lot of different specific tips for R365, but I'm going to launch another poll here just to get a better understanding from everyone. What is your biggest goal for improving operations? Is it reducing operational costs? Is it gaining better insight through reporting? Maybe you want to improve efficiency in your daily tasks. Maybe you want to grow. And I'll give everybody a minute or two, or I should say a few seconds actually, since I want to make sure we have time to talk about this topic. Last call for anybody who is still straggling out there. All right, we're going to go ahead and end this. Same as with every other poll question we've had. It's a mixed bag, right? We're kind of all over the place on where we're at right now, what we're looking for. All of our businesses are unique. As Carlos said, the only similarity we all have is restaurant. So it makes sense that we're kind of all over the place, but want to talk a little bit about that. So let's jump in to pro tips for getting started with R365. So like I said, Carlos, Anthony, we only have a few minutes here. So if there's anything that you guys want to add specifically on pro tips, and Carlos, I know you have a lot of experience, obviously, with the implementation side. So any pro tips that you may have for any of our listeners?
Yeah, I think when someone hears the word onboarding, implementation, or coming aboard, I wouldn't compare it to a traditional software implementation. I would really think of this as it's like a onboarding and training. And you're going to have someone that's going to guide you and your team on what do you currently do? What does 365 do? And then how do we bring it together? And so really you should just kind of, oh, okay, take a deep breath. I don't have to kind of figure this out on my own. I'm not going from a 1980 Buick to a Tesla and I don't know what I'm doing. It's nothing like that at all. So really, that's the first tip is Just really look at it as, okay, I'm going to have someone onboard me and train me on my needs. And then that begins to it. So that's one. The other tip is, and it's kind of like the question that I alluded to a while back, which is when I said, like, what are you looking for food costs? So like the poll question is a really good point. What is it that you're really looking for at a 365 that can help you guide your business? Because then when you bring that to the onboarding team and you're in there from the beginning, now we can customize a plan for you to make it really kind of tailor-made so that you can start to see the benefit faster than maybe, we don't want to work on recipes if invoicing and, inventory is more important or vice versa, right? And so those two things really can just change the experience for any client from the jump.
Awesome. Anything else you would add to that, Anthony, on your side?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would add is, making sure you're looking at this is an investment in your future and in the future of your business, and really thinking of it that way as you're coming in. Look, I'll be implementation can suck. It's a lot of work. It can be a lot of time. I mean, as much as we take a lot of that burden off of you, it's work that's going to take you to go into it. But if you come into it with the right attitude of, this is an investment we're making in our company and in our future and where our improvement are going to go, and making sure we're putting in the time into some of the tasks we give you, or some of the quote unquote homework for you to be able to take that training and actually apply it in the software, to make sure you're understanding and really investing that time into doing it, you're going to reap a lot on the back end. You're going to know the software better. You're going to get up going faster. You're going to, be able to start learning some of the more advanced features of it quicker and getting the most out of it. Because the last thing I always hate to hear is like, we're not really getting anything out of this. It's not really. And then you go back and you look at how implementation went, and they didn't really invest the time into it. They did the minimum amount. And I get we're all busy, and this is never a criticism of any person, but just knowing that this is really an investment in you and your business and how to improve, and making sure you view it that way and have that mindset is going to really help you be successful faster.
Yeah, 100%. And shameless plug for Lion Chaser if you need help during implementation. Well, awesome. Appreciate the conversation. Last poll question really quick. I know, like I said, we only have a few minutes here. I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to answer all of our poll questions. What would you like to learn more about after today's session? Do you want to explore the R365 platform in general? Are you interested in speaking with Lion Chaser for services or ongoing support, or both? Or are you just here for CPE credit? Which, if that's the case, hopefully you answered all the poll questions, so you get your CPE. Give everyone a few minutes here. All right. Last opportunity for any stragglers. Awesome. All right. So Q&A, I know we had a few questions that flowed in here. I don't know if we're going to have a ton of time to answer this. So I want to make sure, I know that we got through some of these questions, I think naturally, as we were kind of going through it. We also had our marketing team here as well, who is answering questions throughout. So I think we have answered most of our questions today. If anything else comes up after we get off here, of course, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to answer those questions. You can schedule a demo on our website, www.restaurant365.com. You can always reach out to us that way. And as I mentioned at the beginning of today's webinar, you will be emailed over a copy of the recording for today's webinar as well. So feel free to reach out to our marketing team that way if you're interested in engaging. But for anyone that did answer that poll question, whether or not you want to be contacted by Lion Chaser, R365, or both, we will be reaching out to you. So do expect to follow up from us or both of us on that front as well. Anthony, Carlos, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you guys here. Thanks for the thoughtful conversation. And to everybody who is here attending our webinar today, thank you so much. Hopefully you found this helpful for your business and you have some actionable steps that you can take to, get started with R365. And so we hope you have a great journey. Thanks everyone for being here. Have a great rest of your day.